I think I speak for most people when I say, man, fuck Overwatch. This game and the company that made it has been the source of stress and pain for many, and as much as the PvE content in Overwatch 2 actually kind of entices me, this rest of it is an endless sea of red flags that's making me think, yeah, to hell with it, I have enough things in my life to assure internal virginity, I don't need one more. And if you do enjoy Overwatch and clicked on this video that started with me ranting about it, if you enjoy the game, that's perfectly fine. I admit most of my salt about the game comes from the fact that I'm very bad at it, and if you enjoy Overwatch and are excited for the sequel, more power to you. But all this anger and rage that surrounds Overwatch made me wonder what even enticed me about this game in the first place. I'll tell you what it was. Wanting to look cool to my friends when it came out by playing the new game that was big and popular, but what grabbed me personally was a little animated short for the game called Dragons. Okay, so people who have watched previous videos of mine will know, I don't make it a secret. I'm kind of a gigantic weeb. Samurai, ninja, dragons, feudal Japan, all that stuff is intriguing to me, and that's mostly because my dad is into that kind of stuff as well, and during my teens, he used to show me all his favourite samurai action movies that he enjoyed in his younger days. So, having two characters in this game that were based all around that kind of thing immediately caught my interest. And while the memes about them in the game and the people who play the characters have kind of brought the reputation of them down, I still love Hanzo and Genji. Genji especially. So what is the Dragons short actually about? Dragons is an animated short focusing on the lore and relationship between Hanzo and Genji, and it alternates between two halves. An ancient story passed down through the Shimada clan about two great dragon brothers, and the two Shimada brothers reuniting after years of being apart. I love this short more than you can imagine. Like, it is genuinely one of my favourite pieces of media ever made, and even making this video, I'm not certain if I can truly put into words why I love it so much, but I'm sure as hell gonna try. So the first thing that we are introduced to when the clip starts is the introduction to the tale of the two dragon brothers, and if you're aware of anything in Overwatch lore, it becomes immediately apparent that the tale of two dragon brothers clearly represents Hanzo and Genji, and even if you know nothing about Overwatch lore, by the end of the short it becomes apparent that it is, as the ending of the tale and the end of the main plotline parallel quite well, but we'll get to that. The tale of the dragon brothers section is clearly here to establish who Genji and Hanzo are and what their history with each other is, being that the two once worked together to uphold balance in the Shimada clan, but the two fell out of favour and Hanzo killed Genji in a rage, a decision he lives to regret. Years later the clan falls apart and all Hanzo has left is the memory of his brother and the regrets he's carried for so long. If you're aware of the Overwatch lore, you know that these two had a fight because Genji lost interest in helping the Shimada clan. Of course we know that Genji decided to pursue a life of luxury after losing interest, and this of course led to the Shimada clan pressuring Hanzo to do something about Genji. I don't think this is a necessary thing to know for the short to work on its own, but it's interesting to note still.
I know you tell yourself that your brother disobeyed the clan.
So, the main part of the clip depicts Hanzo performing his yearly ritual and breaking into the Shimada Palace and going to the place where he killed Genji to mourn his brother's death, when suddenly a mysterious cyborg appears and attacks him while lecturing Hanzo on how this yearly ritual won't bring Genji back, nor will it ever allow him to be free from his past. By the way, you may have noticed that Hanzo places down a bird feather when he mourns Genji's death. If you're aware of the Overwatch lore, you'd know that Sparrow was Genji's nickname among clan members, so this is just a neat little detail. Also, by the way, the clip never actually tells you that this is specifically the place where Hanzo killed Genji, but looking on the sword on display here, and the tattered bloody banner on the wall, it perfectly shows but doesn't tell that this is the place where he probably delivered the final blow, at the very least. I'm sure if you're watching this video, I'm sure you know how it goes, but if you don't, after a long battle, Hanzo uses his ancient dragon powers only for the cyborg to defeat him with a dragon spirit of his own. Once the cyborg wins, he reveals himself to be Genji. But let's get back to that later. First off, I want to talk about this fight scene itself. It's a spectacular fight that starts with the two on opposite sides of the arena, attacking each other with ranged attacks, being distanced from each other, but by the end of the fight, it's a full-on melee brawl where they're in each other's faces. They both literally and figuratively grow close to each other as the fight goes on, until it ends with Hanzo pushing Genji away, only for Genji to end the fight, dashing up to him to get as close as possible, finally ready to reveal who he is. Hanzo uses a ranged weapon, naturally meaning to push people away to use properly, while Genji uses swords, which are about being much more up close and personal. I may be looking too much into that, but it's just how I personally like to interpret it. And while I'm in complete reading between the lines mode, can we talk about the fact that Hanzo has 2 dragons while Genji only has 1? I personally like to believe that this represents Hanzo being incomplete, divided, fighting with himself, while Genji is content and complete, sure of who he is. This divided metaphor of Hanzo also extends to the fact that Genji splits one of Hanzo's arrows in 2. Now, you might argue that Genji quite literally uses 2 swords, so this metaphor falls apart, but this is where I'm going to use my weeaboo knowledge, so get your earholes ready. There is a real-life sword fighting style that involves using 2 swords at once, and it's called Niten Ichiryu. This translates as 2 heavens as 1. It's about using 2 weapons as if 1 weapon. If you've ever seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, more specifically the episode Zuko Alone, you know what I'm on about. You don't treat them as separate weapons. Genji is made of 2 sides, human and cyborg, and by the time of Dragons, he has made peace with it, and the 2 sides are united in the same way he uses 2 swords. Genji's 2 heavens are as 1. And it has allowed him to become more than just a human, and more than just a robot. Now, back to the short itself. Of course the fight ends with Hanzo inviting Genji to finish him off. Genji refuses to grant Hanzo the death he wishes for, as he still believes that Hanzo has a purpose. He then reveals himself as Genji. Hanzo, of course, doesn't believe him, which leads to Genji then taking off his cyborg helmet to reveal his scarred but still recognizable face to Hanzo. And I love that, by the way. Despite how much his face has been scarred and aged, Hanzo still recognizes his brother at first glance, furthering Genji's story that despite everything he's been through, he's still himself. We are then shown the end of the Dragon Brothers story with the 2 Dragon Brothers reuniting to rebuild what they had once destroyed. And after this, Genji tells Hanzo that despite everything, he forgives him, and that the only thing that needs to happen now is that Hanzo has to forgive himself. Hanzo, of course, ignores him in the moment and readies his bow to attack again. I honestly really love that Hanzo doesn't immediately learn the lesson, and that Genji doesn't expect him to either. Being able to move on from the past is a long and hard journey, but it isn't impossible, and Genji knows all he's doing is giving Hanzo that first push he needs. I think if Hanzo did just immediately switch up his attitude after Genji told him this, it would feel very ham-fisted and unnatural, so I like that Hanzo doesn't immediately change up. Hanzo readies his bow again and tells Genji that real life isn't like the stories their father told them. This being dramatic irony, of course, as we know the story of the Dragon Brothers parallels Genji and Hanzo's story quite well. Genji then ends on the rawest line in the whole clip, and one that has stuck with me for years.
Perhaps I am a fool to think there is still hope for you. But I do. Think on that, brother.
Genji is reminding Hanzo that despite the fact he literally tried to kill him, he no longer holds any ill will and is willing to move on, regardless of whether he thinks he should or not. Genji would absolutely be in his right to never forgive Hanzo for attempting to kill him, but he does move on from it, because he doesn't want to hold on to that pain or rage anymore, and that is powerful. And with that, the clip ends with Hanzo doing so, thinking on that, returning to his meditation with a new state of mind, about to perhaps take a similar journey to what Genji had. We end with a final shot of the 2 dragons in harmony flying together as a reminder of what was lost, and a reminder that it can be found again. This animated short is honestly a beautiful story, with or without the context of everything else in the Overwatch universe, and that's a difficult feat to achieve. This clip elevated Genji from being that really cool Cyborg Ninja Dude to literally one of my favorite characters in any piece of fiction ever. Genji isn't just a cool cyborg, not just a badass swordsman, but he's a man who, despite everything that's changed him physically, knows who he is mentally, and won't let anyone or anything change that. And while I am very clearly showing my bias towards Genji here, Hanzo is also brilliant in this clip. He's your typical Ronin wanderer tortured by his past type character, but the fact that he seems to think he's doing the best thing he can by mourning his brother Genji shows that he's not a complete heartless villain, he's just misguided and screwed up. I also love the philosophical question of what it means to be honorable, a common theme in samurai stories. Hanzo believes that he is honoring Genji with his yearly visits and offerings, but Genji believes that the only true way to show honor would be to learn from his mistakes and grow as a person.
Honor resides in one's actions.
And before I close off, it'd be criminal not to mention the fantastic soundtrack that accompanies this clip. It does such a great job of capturing the emotion and the intensity of this clip, and it's just so good. And so, while the actual game Overwatch makes me want to swift strike out the nearest skyscraper window, Dragons will always remain a masterclass cinematic that never gets old no matter how many times I revisit it.